topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Are you ready for Insights to Incite? Ready or not, it's showtime. Now get ready to listen in and watch right here on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Join us and together we will escape the mundane. Insights to Incite, here is your host, Brandon Lawson.
Hello. It has been said, appreciate life even when it's not perfect. Happiness is not fulfillment of what we wish for, but an appreciation of what we have. Quote unknown who said it. Then it was Matthew Ricard who said, happiness is a state of inner fulfillment, not the gratification of inexhaustible desires for outward things. Today is Thursday, May 13th. This is Brandon Lawson coming to you from my place of residence here in Ohio. And I want to thank all of you who tune in, whether you're a listener or a viewer, however you see our show or watch, listen. And we'd love for you to join us every week. And we thank you for being here today. And today I want to talk with you about fulfillment. Yes. Fulfillment. Fulfillment is a term that's very subjective, you could say. You know, what fulfills you does not necessarily fulfill the person in the cubicle next to you. I mean, you know, what fulfills you, your father or your mother, doesn't necessarily fulfill you. And the same can be said about the two of them if you were to compare the two to one another, your mother and your father. You know, they may find that what fulfills them is maybe a wide stretch apart, may not be anything close to. And, you know, while that is true, you know, but in fact, you know, the fact of the matter is, if you live under the same roof, family or not, people who live under the same roof, you know, will generally, you find that their idea of fulfillment or their definition of what fulfills them, you know, will vary even more widely than someone you've never met. There may be a stranger, someone you've never met, never even spoken to. And you could find that many times their concept of what fulfillment is, of what brings fulfillment, is more in agreement with yours than those who live in the same household. You know, and but, you know, why is that? Well, before I get to why, I just want to share, I believe that this is one of the complications that leads to issues in marital relationships. Yeah, that might seem strange, or why would Brandon say that? I believe it's one of the things that leads to issues in marital relationships, but I also believe it also is the, you know, often what helps in initiating friendships and how they first begin. Please, let me explain. Now, I'm going to read this to you because I gave some real thought to this. This really required more thought than some of the other lessons that I've given, but I believe what I have to share is valid and true. Of course, I wouldn't say it, but just want to read it to you. And I put, you know, for the forming of friendships or the initiating of them, how they first start, you think of the initial connection. Well, generally, there's something that you have in common. Maybe you enjoy the same musical artist. So as a result, you're both at the same concert. Or maybe it's a specific sport you like, you know, or, you know, and maybe it even goes a bit further as to being used both, you know, your favorite team is the same. You both enjoy this sport franchise. That's your favorite. So as a result, you're at the same game. Or it might be something totally different. It might be along the lines of something you both desire to improve in, something in life. Or take business, for example. You might want to improve in your ability to network because you realize the significance that plays the role it plays in, being able to build your business and keep it going. Or maybe it's about leadership. Whatever it is about, you both desire to grow and improve in that area. So you're at the same workshop. And while you're there, whatever it is, the sporting event, the concert, the workshop, you meet one another, and you find yourself talking, talk about the event or about the game or about the team itself. And so you get to talking and you just really connect, you really mesh well. And it just grows from that point. Well, let's say that the two of you are one's a man, one's a lady, and you both happen to be single. Well, being that you enjoyed one another in that initial connection, you both found fulfillment in the same thing. That led to you talking, and it grew to more conversation. And then, being you're single and that, and you're both single, you make time for one another, and your friendship grows, and then it goes deeper, and next thing you know, the two of you are engaged. And then a year later, you walk down the aisle together. You're officially husband and wife. And then a common yet strange phenomenon, I would even say ever so strange, but very common phenomenon happens. And, the fact of the matter is, instead of feeling, and experiencing a stronger attraction for one another, you now feel more and more detached from one another. And, here you're around each other more and more, you spend more and more time together, yet seemingly it feels like you're, the unity, the intimacy, that togetherness is fading. It seems like that togetherness is seemingly less and less. And you say to one another, what happened? We were the perfect match for one another before marriage, and now, what is went wrong? You can't put a finger on it. You don't know what the issue is or why. Well, you've probably heard it said, along the lines of, here you're around one another more and more, so those little nuances or things that might be considered idiosyncrasy, annoying little things about your personality, the other sees it every day, sees it all the time, and it's hard to look past when it's always there. And so it starts to generate feelings of that aren't about, they're not attraction, but it starts to rub each other sort of the wrong way. You don't feel as close, you don't feel drawn into one another like before. Well, I can see how that could play a part. That's what it's often been said, or what you may find others have said, or you may think even. And I can agree there's some validity there, but I get a different take on this. And this take, my what I see in it, it runs, you might say, a bit deeper. What I see here is, the fact about it, let's look at this from the standpoint of men, ladies, and start with the lady and like their clothing or footwear, their wardrobe. Ladies are more about variety, I mean, you might recall back from I want to say it was early 90s. It might have went into the mid 90s, possibly the late 90s. I'm not sure when their run pretty much was over with. But there was a ladies band. It was more of a in pop music or soft rock called the Spice Girls. Well, what is it been said about variety? Variety is the spice of life, they say. The ladies like variety. They like that, mix it up, give different stuff here and there. They like that variety. You haven't heard of the band the Spice Guys, right? It's the Spice Girls, you know. But ladies with their wardrobe, what was popular 2 years ago is not in style today. What is in style today, chances are 2 years from now will not be in style. But consider a man's wardrobe. Uh, what was popular 5 years ago is probably suffices today. You wouldn't be out of style. A man's wardrobe, doesn't change. Where a lady's it's constantly evolving. New styles of shoes come out almost every year, and there's other stuff, that the wardrobe that new lines, new outfits, new cuts, or whatever about that piece of clothing, but it's constantly changing, ever evolving. And I see this a lot also in how ladies see, look at the outer world, their perception, and how they see the world around them, including, the people they're with. And and a lot of this also goes back to how men and women are wired differently, and just our hormonal balances within ourselves, and what makes up a female than what makes up a male. It causes us to have different tastes, different moods, and and like for instance, a lady, she may have hot flashes one day, and then 2 days later, nothing's happened in between that's rocked her world, or anything that's threw her schedule or agenda in a tailspin, or any such thing. She's in the exact same setting, around the same people, same scenario, nothing new about it, and yet she has no hot flashes. And mind you, it wasn't like the weather outside was 98 degrees with a heat index of 114, and the air conditioner went out in the facilities. Has nothing to do with that, the temperature of the atmosphere of such. In fact, the day she had those hot flashes, she might have, had them the day when it was, 39 degrees outside with a 24-degree wind chill. And the heat, the furnace wasn't working all too well. Yet she had hot flashes. But that's what happens. And you see this and when you think of going back to that initial friendship, how it began and how it grew, and and how they took such a liking for one another, they later tied the knot and stuff. And with that said, what you may notice is, as you become married, a lot of times ladies, the very thing that drew them to that man, the very thing that they, found attractive about it, whether it was a, certain a look, it could be a personality, or whatever it was, now, is it's not so much that it's unattractive, but it doesn't really draw her in anymore. She needs something new. What worked for 3 years ago when you met isn't what's winning her today. It's been said that a lady marries a man expecting him to change, and he does not. A man marries a lady expecting she won't change, and she does. And it may sound funny, but part of what makes things funny in many cases is it's true. And that's very true. I mean, if you think back, you might even be one who's experienced that. You think of when the two of you were dating, and how you were head over heels for one another. You were each other's priority, so in love. You were united, unlike anything you'd ever experienced. And now you might have only been married 8 months. Maybe it's been much longer than that. But that fire of desire that was burning ever so brightly within you, you could see the light in one another's eyes. The light in their eyes is faded. It's dull. It's dim. It's gone. That flame within you, start to dwindle. And you got less and less. So it went from that brightness to a dullness. Then it got dimmer and dimmer. And then it's done. That fizzling went out to being finished. It's gone. And a lot of times those relationships, you know, they fizzle out in, divorce. The divorce rate is outrageous. I mean, it's just way up there. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's seems like, that till death do us part doesn't mean much. You may say it, but before you know it, you're ready to throw in the towel. But even if you just don't get divorced, if that light goes out within the relationship, it's like you may be living together, you may be under the same roof, you're a couple, or you're two together, but you're not a couple. You're simply coexisting, is pretty much what it is. It's not really truly what you call a couple. You're not united. And so if you can see how that took place, we started with how this, what we found in common, what we both found fulfilling, whether it's a certain event, or, a sporting event, a concert, a workshop, or maybe it's something altogether different. Maybe it was church where you met. But that initial, commonality of, what you both found fulfilling brought you to the same place. Then as you started talking to one another and you talked about that, and then maybe conversation spilled outward about other stuff, but you was really connected and you found one another attractive, and that's drew you into one another. And then once you got married, it starts to split the other way. What pulled you in is now going outward. And ladies, they, what they like, and that today, if you're with them, if you're their man, 4 years from now, they may not. And also when she doesn't like, or doesn't really isn't drawn in or isn't won over by the thing that won her to you 3-4 years ago, whatever, in the same vein, she will often, think that, she doesn't want to be the same person she was 3 or 4 years ago. She wants him to constantly reinvent himself, and she wants to do that, just because she wants to. I mean, but her want for him to do it is, in effect, it's almost like imposing, imposing, or or otherwise, the light, the desire, the fire within her is not going to be there. And she, on the other hand, wanting to reinvent herself, she does it just because she solely wants to. But the issue there is, goes back to that quote I just gave you about a man or a lady marries a man expecting that he will change, and he doesn't. A man marries a lady expecting she won't change, and she does. Well, you see that she's wanting him to change, but from a guy's viewpoint, we, what we did that worked, we don't want to screw it up, and so we think we're doing right, and in her eyes, it isn't what wins her anymore. And at the same time, she wanting to reinvent herself, well, she starts to remake herself and become something different than the lady we fell in love with. And as a result, well, next thing you know, he's not attracted to this new person. The one he fell in love with isn't her anymore. And you see how that divide happens, how that splits. And so, what faded out was the fulfillment. And a lot of it is how ladies are wired, how they're created compared to how a man's wired, how he's created. And, how she views things, how he views it, and what is acceptable to her, what is desirable compared to what is acceptable to him, what's desirable to him, And you see that phenomenon take place over and over. And, and maybe it's not even in a marriage. It could be you have, your daughter, she's a beautiful girl, a beautiful young lady. And, she's capable of so much more. Just 3 years ago, she was one of the honor students, and, she was looked up to in her class. So many people, flocked to her. She had influence. She did a great job. Now she has no desire to serve or to be in any capacity to where she can affect or impact society. She just wants to be left alone. You say, what happened to that light in my my little lady, my young daughter. What has become of her? Or maybe it's your son. That gentle guy who was always glad to help. He was a straight A student and he was looked up to. He got along with everyone. And now he doesn't want anything to do with you or anybody else. He stays to himself, or maybe he does things with others, but he's with the wrong crowd. And you say, what became of my son? Where is the light in him? That light that just beamed so brightly. That light in her that just radiated forth. It came out of her and she lit the place up everywhere she goes. And now it's like there's no light there. Well, each of these, whether it's a parent to your kids, or your spouses unto one another, a lot of it can be found in many cases. And are they fulfilled anymore? There things that change, and that fulfillment of what fulfilled them before is not the same. I think to myself, not even a matter of fulfillment, but just in my taste of how, my mother, years later, this would be, it could have been 15, 20 something years later. She's trying to do something, or thought I would want to do something that I have no interest whatsoever. And she would say, well, you used to like to. Yeah, that was 15, 20 something years ago. People change over time. As we're introduced to new things, our desires change. What we see as good, as desirable, is different than what it was. Because if you were never exposed to anything better, why would you have desired that better? You wouldn't, because you wouldn't have known of it, really. You wouldn't have had any taste of it to know it was better. But as you experience more, you see more, you're around, whether it's other people or different places, what you desire changes. But as a result, but when it comes to human relations, ladies, just the way God made us, I guess, seem to desire a constant evolving, a reinventing of the wheel, as I said, where a man, he doesn't want the lady to change. The very lady he fell in love with, he doesn't want her to change. That's the one he wants to be with the rest of his life. And when she starts to change, it's like, what has become of her? Why? This ain't the lady I married, or the same you say to you about your kids. What took place? Well, again, that fulfillment is not there. What fulfilled him at one point doesn't anymore. And so the real question is, how do we discover fulfillment? What is fulfillment? What is it to you? Well, I got some things I want to share with you. Again, like I said, I gave a lot of thought to this, and I've really put this together. And I think what I have to share, hopefully it's insightful for you. You think it, isn't something that's been copied off of someone else, because I don't like to do that. But what I'm really getting at is, this is something you may not have heard. This is my own take on it. This ain't something I've read where I got material out of a book that stated this. But I'm looking forward to sharing this with you. But first, we're going to step away to our first commercial, and we'll be back shortly.
Wow, that was insightful. Stay tuned as we go on a quick break, and we'll be right back with more Insights to Incite right here on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV. Are you seeking a speaker or coach who speaks life into your people? If so, look no further. Brandon Lawson is one who will inspire and motivate his audience, as well as empathize and relate to all. Reach out to Brandon and let him be your speaker and life coach by sending an email to brandon@connectandimpact.net or calling him at 513-520-7597. Brandon looks forward to speaking with you, to you, and for you. Let's connect and impact today. Insights to Incite, a real show with real-life messages. This show, which can be found on radio, TV, and our podcast, gives us insight to incite us to action and to excellence. Watch and or listen to Insights to Incite live at noon Eastern Time every Thursday on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Check out our past episodes on iHeartRadio, YouTube, or anywhere you listen to your podcast. Join us each week, and together we will escape the mundane. We are back with more Insights to Incite, so get ready and tune in to listen and watch. Now, once again, let's join Brandon Lawson.
So we're talking here about, fulfillment. So what is it that we can do to bring about fulfillment in one another? And while fulfillment is something that takes place inside of us, it's that inner feeling that rises up. That's not to say that nothing on the outside of us would ever play a role. It definitely does. And so that's something we need to be clear on. Just because it's an inner, it's a feeling of fulfillment. It's something you sense from within. It still is the outer world, your externals, play a large role in this. For instance, you might make great money on your job. You actually enjoy the type of work you do, but your boss always nags at you. So you never do anything right. You can never please him. Even when you do good, you could have did better. You feel unappreciated. You feel like you're always fighting an uphill battle, or you're running on a treadmill. You're running, but you're getting nowhere. Well, that's draining. That certainly is not fulfilling. So, and just like with the spouse, if your significant other is always telling you, how you're not right. You did this wrong. You did that wrong. You're just wrong. It doesn't have a good word for you. That's not a fulfilling relationship. I mean, sometimes that same spouse or same significant other might actually tell someone else you're very good, and brag on you to someone else, but to you, you got quite a different story. Well, you're not fulfilled. So our outer world, what we surround ourselves with and what we experience, what we go through plays a part in that. And so what is it that brings this fulfillment? Well, I believe there's two things. And this is the sum of these will bring fulfillment. And those two are gratification plus empowerment equals fulfillment. As I think of gratification, I think of that as two different words, two words that are combined of being gratified and having satisfaction. To be satisfied, you're happy with where things are. But having that gratification, that being there, that having that gratitude and satisfaction is where we get the gratification, but having the gratitude, the gratefulness, that grateful attitude, and that along with being satisfied leads to gratification. So gratification plus empowerment equals fulfillment. So now the question is, what do we do, or what can we do to help each other to experience gratification? Well, here's my thoughts on this. I believe enjoyment multiplied by influence equals gratification. You can't really say that you're grateful to be in, such a situation, whether it's a relationship or, the way you are financially well off or whatever it is. You can't really be, feeling such gratefulness, and have such gratitude for such if you don't even enjoy it. I mean, that just enjoyment is what spills over to gratification. It's what spills over to help us to be grateful because of how good we have it. That's the enjoyment, the good, and it spills over in a gratefulness, gratitude. So there, have that. But enjoyment by itself doesn't mean you're gratified. You might enjoy something, but you're not really satisfied. So you still have that satisfaction missing. But enjoyment multiplied by influence, the product thereof is gratification. As you think of that, you're enjoying, your life, you're enjoying what you do, knowing that, and you have influence. You see how you're impacting lives for the better. You're making a difference. You're getting things changed for the better. You're instrumental in helping to rewrite, the rule books, or maybe it's getting new laws instituted. You think of some laws that get instituted, a lot of times they have a name to them because they're named after someone. And sadly, in those instances, it's generally because a tragedy occurred with that same person it's named after. And that they put this law into effect to try to prevent future tragedies of the same kind. But, if you can do it this while you're living, you're enjoying life and you're impacting, you're getting things, you know, getting changes made, you making headway, so you're having influence and you're enjoying it. That leads us to gratification, where we have this satisfaction of where we are in life, of where we're moving toward, the path we're on, and we're grateful because of it. That's the gratification. So when we think of empowerment, well, the equation for this, I believe, if you saw this as a math problem, these first two would be in a parentheses because it's the combination thereof multiplied by. And that combination it's the combination of being good and doing good. And, and when I say doing good, I mean, you can do good at being a punk. You might be very successful and do a good job at it, and from the standpoint of you're succeeding. But what I'm talking about when I say doing good, I'm talking about the deeds you do. Generally when you're doing good deeds, that, and we're speaking of for others, not solely about self, but doing good deeds. When you are doing good deeds, you're being good. But that combination of doing good plus being good multiplied by being productive. Because we can do good and be good, and yet we really didn't. We didn't produce anything. We didn't advance or make headway in anything. We're still at the same place we are. But when you do good, and in the process of being good by doing that good, and you're being productive, that helps us to experience empowerment. We feel empowered. We see that, what we're doing is good and how it's affecting others. We're being good. We're being productive. And, that empowers us to continue on. We want to keep doing this. We see the results. We see the impact we're having, that. And when you take both of those, when you take that gratification and that empowerment and add them together, you have fulfillment. Have you ever seen it like that? Have you ever noticed that? So, going back to, your relationships, spousal relationships, you and your children, your daughter, your son. What is it you know about them? I mean, hopefully you know them well. I mean, that's something that you should, and we all should know such people in our lives on a good basis, know them really well. But what do you know about your daughter that, she enjoys? What is something she enjoys doing? Maybe she has a love for a certain crowd. She is, like, maybe there's some cause that she's very passionate about. Some people, it might be for handicapped children of a certain handicap, like autistic children. Others, it might be for cancer patients. Others, it could be something totally different, altogether different. But find out what they enjoy. What is it that your husband, your wife enjoys, your son enjoys? help to bring them in that kind of setting, that scenario, to be able to experience that. And generally speaking, when somebody enjoys something, it's not a given, but many times they're good at it. I mean, they're very effective. They can be very impactful and such. And so for them to take a lead role and be influential as a result would only come natural to them. On the other hand, if they don't like it, it's hard for them to even feel comfortable in this scenario, let alone be the one to take, the lead role or to play the role of influencer, to be that one who impacts and affects the crowd around them. But when they enjoy it, it's easier for them to be one who influences in that same respect, along in that same way, in the same uh, field or the same setting of what they enjoy. But you have to ask yourself, and you have to be aware of how you are, and you have to ask yourself, why stay out of their way? Because that can be a big issue. People will, at times, they, someone's doing good and that, but they want to come along and they'll say, honey, if you did this, it would actually be even a little better. So, even though, you may think you're doing good, and I question whether those people really think they are doing good. I think some of them know they're not, and they're trying to disguise it. But even if you think you are, if you're constantly telling them how they can be better, instead of allowing them to experience the good they have done, and many times if that thing you want to share, they may see that themselves, and chances are they will. In time, they'll see that and they'll grow into that, and they'll be even more fulfilled. They'll have just a greater feeling within and feel better about themselves, about life. Their outlook will be better and everything. But if you're always telling them, well, yeah, that'll work, but if you did this, it would be better. You're basically saying you're still not good enough. I mean, that's the message that's communicated when you continually, just want to say how they could be better than they were. And so you have to be aware of your tendencies and stay out of their way. If they enjoy it and they're, chances are they're good at it. And so they're going to be able to influence that. A lot of people might look up to them and follow them. That's what a leader is. If someone follows you, you influence them. People would look up to them because they are good. So if they're already looked up to just naturally because they're good at what they do and they're actually enjoying it, don't come in and try to act like you're making it better when you're just dampening it. You're stripping them of that enjoyment they got from it. You're going to strip them of that enjoyment. And next thing you know, they won't want to lead. The very thing they loved doing and enjoyed doing and was very good at, others really looked up to, you've stripped them of that enjoyment. That light is again faded out. It's gone. So beware. Allow them. Get out of their way. So find what they enjoy, what they're good at, which will often find that many things are one and the same that you enjoy and are good. Find out what it is and then allow them to be that influencer, that enjoyment, and they'll be gratified. And then going over to that combination of being good and doing good, that in much can be the same thing of what we just talked about in the, what they enjoy and are influential at. They're doing good, they're being good, what they're doing good, they enjoy that good deed they do, and they're being good, they're, chances are influencing other lives, people really appreciate them, they're drawn to them because of it. And then, you take that combination of the being good and the doing good, and you notice that a lot of what they're doing in the being good and doing good is being productive. And so that's together there. And what comes out of that? Empowerment. Friends, when your wife feels that gratification, when she's satisfied and has such gratitude within her, and that plus she's empowered, you could say, she's like on the mountaintop, she's doing great. She's fulfilled. This is the life you want for her. And wives, that should be the life you want for him, your husband. Parents, you should want that for your siblings. I mean, we should want that for one another, no matter what the relationship. But too many times, I think we fail to even recognize this scenario, this how the factors come in and how they build such an equation to produce this. And next thing you know, the very one we fell in love with that was so fulfilled with being with us, doesn't seem like that they care to be around us anymore. Yeah, they're there, but you are both in the same home, but you're just coexisting. You're not united. Your worlds apart, even though you might only be, 75 feet apart, one in one room, one in the other. But in that unity, that intimacy is lost. It's gone. You don't feel that closeness, that togetherness. It's not there anymore. They're no longer fulfilled. So that's why fulfillment matters. Yes, this is lesson 6 in our series, Matters That Matter. Can you see how that, has happened? And maybe you've picked up on how that is, played itself out in your life when you see that. As I try to give you visuals where you can visualize, to be able to see in your own life where you can personify, you can put yourself in the story. Plus, many times, a story helps speak to the extremity of something, whether it's of how good something is or how bad something is. It puts it in perspective. And that's what I want to do for you, to help you to see it. So, what will you do? I'm going to, give a few pointers and things to wrap up when we come back. But first, we're going to step away to our second commercial, and we'll be back shortly.
Wow, that was insightful. Stay tuned as we go on a quick break, and we'll be right back with more Insights to Incite right here on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV. Are you seeking a speaker or coach who speaks life into your people? If so, look no further. Brandon Lawson is one who will inspire and motivate his audience, as well as empathize and relate to all. Reach out to Brandon and let him be your speaker and life coach by sending an email to brandon@connectandimpact.net or calling him at 513-520-7597. Brandon looks forward to speaking with you, to you, and for you. Let's connect and impact today. Insights to Incite, a real show with real-life messages. This show, which can be found on radio, TV, and our podcast, gives us insight to incite us to action and to excellence. Watch and or listen to Insights to Incite live at noon Eastern Time every Thursday on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV. Check out our past episodes on iHeartRadio, YouTube, or anywhere you listen to your podcast. Join us each week, and together we will escape the mundane. We are back with more Insights to Incite, so get ready and tune in to listen and watch. Now, once again, let's join Brandon Lawson.
Okay, so we're speaking of this fulfillment and how we can generate it, how we can help produce it for others. And something you probably already know, but when you're able to generate that fulfillment in others, what happens is you yourself are fulfilled. Generating in others is doing much of what we talked about here. Chances are you'll enjoy it. You're having influence on others by your, bringing about that fulfillment in them. And you're doing good deed. In the process, you're being good. And you're being productive because you're producing that and helping to produce that in that other person. And those are what we looked at. The enjoyment and influence brings about the gratification. The combination of being good and doing good multiplied by being productive brings the empowerment, and that gratification plus empowerment brings fulfillment. So when you do that for others, when you help bring that in others, you're doing it for yourself. You're bringing it about within you. And so, I want to give you some practical things that you may think to do, and hopefully you'll give it a try. believe it could work very well for you. And as you know, the show is called Insights to Incite. I give you insights in the hopes that you'll be incited to action, that it will incite you to do better, to be better, to create a better world for yourself and for those around you. That's the whole concept behind the lesson shared in this show. So consider, say, 2 people or 3 at most, at one time. You can, after you do these, could pick another 2, another 3, but 2 or 3 at most. Think of people and have one of them be someone you're very close to, a family member, a significant other. And think to yourself, of what it is you can do to help bring this empowerment. How is it that you will, help to bring that and to put them in that place of enjoyment, in a place where they are good and influence others, to bring about that gratification, Put them in that scenario where they're doing good deeds and they're being good. And in doing so, they're being productive, bringing about that empowerment. And together with that gratification and empowerment, bringing about the fulfillment. Think to yourself, who do you know that doesn't like to be fulfilled? Can you think of anyone? Chances are you cannot. Fulfillment is something it's a innate desire that's built in all of us. If we're unfulfilled, we're not living, we're just existing. None of us wants to be in that state. That's, it can be a very miserable place to live. Do you want to continue to float in the river of misery? Or do you want to grow and go up to the mountain of fulfillment? You have more control in it than you realize. And it starts with looking outward to bring it about in others. And as you do, you yourself will experience it. This is Brandon Lawson. We are here, as you may very well know, we're here on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV every Thursday at 12 noon Eastern. And we hope you join us again next week and every week, as we'll be back here then. And we want to thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you then. Thank you.
Wow, what an insightful show. Thanks for listening in and watching today. If you missed any part of today's show or any other episode, check it out on iHeartRadio, YouTube, or anywhere you listen to your podcast. Now take today's insight and utilize it. Incite yourself to action and to excellence in the week ahead, and join us again next Thursday and every Thursday at 12 noon Eastern Time for another insightful session with Brandon Lawson as he speaks to us and shares some more insights to incite right here on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV.